All right, this is going to be attempt number 2 here, actually. The first time I recorded this, I had added the second input, but I didn't double check my OBS settings. So when you add a new input, it automatically spams it across every audio track. So I went in to go do the audio review and found that actually it's in all of the tracks. So with that slight modification, now we should now have the Sennheiser MKE 600 will be on one track, and the Earthworks ETHOS will be on another track. So that will provide us the ability to compare and contrast as we go through this. So what I wanted to do in this video was to kind of capture the differences in between a shotgun mic and more of your up-close vocals mic. So again, this is not rocket science here, but just to showcase the differences, these are both really good microphones. Honestly, don't remember the cost on both. I'm thinking they're relatively in the same ballpark. Definitely not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but also not terrifying on the other end of the spectrum. You know, again, we're not talking $7,000 or $8,000 for a microphone. But the idea here is to talk about both of the microphones. I go through a little bit of the pros and cons of them, and then put this all together in a video. I'm not entirely sure how this format's going to work. Probably just title card it as I go through on which microphone is doing what. The other thing that I want to do for sure is to make sure that these are getting to you fairly unprocessed. So what I mean by that is I have a lot of noise in this space. So to my left are a series of servers that are reasonably tame, but they still produce noise. And then the largest noise producer is going to be the air conditioning unit. So the air conditioning unit runs pretty hard all the time to make sure that this room stays decently cool. Somewhere, 67, 69 degrees Fahrenheit as we go through. So depending on how much load the servers are under, that will increase or decrease the amount of air conditioning sound that we have in this space. This is one of those where, because I have the servers here, this is not a great studio environment, yada, yada, yada. The irony being, I built my primary computer around the idea of silence. Very quiet fans, unbelievable amounts of radiator space so that even those quiet fans barely turn to be able to dissipate insane amounts of heat. But the servers cannot be tamed in this fashion. Well, I should say can't be tamed in that fashion. The server's heat goes into the room just like the computer's heat goes into the room, but instead of working with maybe 1,000 watts of heat, I'm now dealing with 6,000 to 7,000 watts of heat from the servers. So slightly higher BTU load. Anyway, I digress on that particular topic. So what we want to do is kind of talk through these two microphones. So the Earthworks ETHOS is a broadcast condenser microphone. It has a frequency response range from 20 hertz up to 30,000 hertz. The polar pattern is supercardioid. It has a diaphragm size of 14 millimeters. It is phantom powered, solely phantom powered. It has a signal noise ratio of 78 decibels, peak acoustic input at 145 decibels, and it has self noise of around 16 decibels. And the last bit here that we want to go over, this is a fairly heavy mic, so this is 1.34 pounds. So again, it's going to be on a monitor arm, a boom arm or something that you've got plugged in here. And so the weight's not going to really matter that much, but when I go over the Sennheiser, you'll see the serious difference in weight class. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about there was, again, as we talk about monitor arms, good gravy, I'm still not doing well. The differences. So why do I own a Sennheiser MKE 600? So the Sennheiser MKE 600 was something that I used extensively in my previous job, doing live recordings and moving subjects where I needed to have a little bit of throw and still be able to do some it doesn't weigh a ton to be able to kind of be mobile. So with that, the whole idea and premise was that we could put these reasonably far from our our presenters, and then still pick them up and also get a decent amount of noise rejection as well. So the Sennheisers fit that role very well. Also didn't exceed the budgetary requirements that we were working in. It was a pretty good fit. So having used that for a number of years, and then having one on my own during that time frame, because I liked the mic, it was a good mic. It provided me with something that I was really looking for, and that was the ability to put the microphone away from me. And one of the primary drivers for that is that I use the 42-inch monitor size. So I use the LG C4 currently at 42 inches, and so having an arm really bothers me. So again, this has been kind of configured to where it's not terribly intrusive, but again, you've got this arm and overall this whole idea that this thing is here. And so as I look over to my left, I do see, again, with the video format that I'm using here at 27mm, you're not going to see it at all, but for the very far edge of this 42-inch monitor, I'm getting this in that vision range. It's not terrible, and I've done a lot to try and configure and move this arm around a few times to find something that interferes the least, but it's still definitely there. So this is one where, for the most part, the audio quality that I was going for really didn't matter that much. But the more I was producing, the more I was realizing it doesn't sound the way I want it to sound. So I did a lot of research and trying to find a microphone that had a warmer, richer sound to it. And that was a journey in and of itself, because your primary use case for a microphone and the driver, the cost, everything that goes into a microphone is going to be revolving around how transparent that microphone is to your audio chain. Because for the most part, microphones are not that you don't want your microphone to introduce a sound to your instrument. So if I'm picking up an acoustic guitar or a piano or anything, I want exactly what I hear in the room to be fed into my recording. If that microphone is tampering with that signal, then we have a problem, because I'm no longer getting a true to life recording. The difference is we've seen kind of, I don't say a resurgence, but this podcast type of audio has become more and more popular, and for good reason as well. there was a lot of research done way back in the day for a process called the BBC dip. And I won't get into that too deep, or I'm really not going to get into it at all here, but what was found was that a perfectly analytical sound is actually not as pleasing to the end user as a sound that's been slightly modified. Again, a lot of information there. I recommend going and looking that up. It's fascinating and was done many years ago. Some very, very interesting topics to go through there. But long and short, one of the things that people have started doing is, as they're doing these podcasts, they want that warmer, richer, what's the word I'm looking for here? Almost fireside, leather chair, comfortable sound. And so there are a number of microphones out there that are, the podcast microphone. And I recommend, if you're doing a search for a microphone, YouTube is an amazing resource. I know a lot of people really hate on YouTube for audio impressions because YouTube messes with the sound due to its compression algorithms. But if you're doing a one-to-one video where a person is recording, product A, product B, product C, product D, etc., in the same video with the same settings, and you trust them not to be messing with it, it's an amazing way to listen to a ton of different microphones and find the one that you're looking for. Again, if you Google, I want a warm microphone, a couple of things are going to come up very quickly. The first off is there are several companies that have branded themselves around warm being in their brand itself. They are not very warm. And the second is this herd mentality for a couple of different microphones. These are good microphones. Please do not let me tell you anything other than that. But you've got the, I think it's the Shure. Hold on, let me give 1 second here. I think it's the SM58. Give me one more second. Pretty sure it's the SM58. No, I'm sorry. It is the SM7B. A very good microphone, very solid, used by a ton of people. And the other one, I am not going to remember off the top of my head, and I'm not going to go and look for it either. But there are two microphones, the Shure being surprisingly one of the less expensive options compared to the other one. And again, they're very good microphones. They got a good sound profile. They don't really bring a lot to the table. Again, very accurate, very solid microphones. Definitely, with the Shure having, again, a bit of a cult following behind it, its price is, in my opinion, a little bit beyond what it should be. Just because if you're looking for, you Google, I want a podcast mic, the SM7B is going to be one of, if not the search result hit for that. Again, most of your streamers are using it. Again, it's a very popular microphone with good reason. But when you start digging into it, it's like, that's not exactly the sound that I want. So I did a fairly long and extensive search going through a lot of different YouTubers demoing different microphones. Some of those demos had like 30 plus microphones in them. And, again, those were relatively short duration tests where they would read like one sentence and then move on to the next microphone. But overall you were kind of getting a top level, and then you can kind of find, all right, these are more of what I'm looking for, but are either not in the price range that I'm looking for, or still not exactly what I'm looking for. And then you can go through and start refining that down even further by saying, all right, I want to do this microphone compared to, and then let Google kind of fill in the blank with microphones that it's seen as comparisons. And that's an amazing function, where you can kind of, you don't know what the comparison is, but you can ask, hey, I know this particular object. Are there any others that are, in that same range? And again, without having a background in it, it can be kind of hard to know what and where. Then we've got the Shure MKE 600, which is going to be roughly arm distance away from me. A little bit further, but roughly arm distance. And if we go and look at the specifications on this guy, the Sennheiser MKE 600 is going to be a frequency response of 40 hertz to 20,000 hertz. It has an equivalent noise level that is going to be slightly different in between whether or not this is running off of phantom power or internal battery power. So with phantom power, it is 15 decibels. With battery power, it will be 16. It has a max pickup range on phantom power of 132 decibels, and on battery at 126 decibels. Does it say diaphragm? Does not say diaphragm. That's kind of interesting. It does not tell me what the diaphragm size is. The overall width of this product is 20 millimeters, so the diaphragm has to be 20 millimeters or less. I can probably look that up at some point. But the other interesting part about this one is that it weighs 128 grams, which is going to be roughly 2.8 pounds, and then it is roughly 10 inches long. So very different profile than the Earthworks microphone. So all of that said, why am I comparing these two microphones at all? And again, just to kind of give you an idea of the audio differences that you can achieve using different tools for different jobs. The MKE 600 is an amazing microphone, and this is not a knock on it at all. It will continue to remain one of my microphones that I keep around because it is very good at what it does. Whereas the Earthworks provides something, again, being a better tool for the job. We're looking at a little bit better off-axis noise rejection. We're also looking at a sound profile that better matches what I want out of the box. So looking at this microphone's frequency response page, we see that at about 100 hertz for the Earthworks, we're seeing a small bump that runs up to about 700 hertz is about the peak gain on that. And then we kind of dip back down to about 0 decibels gain at 1 kilohertz. And then we see a very slow roll off from 1 kilohertz to about 4 kilohertz. 4 kilohertz being the largest dip there. So slow roll off and then a larger dip at 4 kilohertz. Again, we are talking maybe 1 or 2 decibels here. And then, again, as you get a little bit higher towards that 10 kilohertz range, you start to get the breakup and just general roll off entirely. So while this microphone is capable of doing frequencies higher than that, you're falling off a cliff for those types of frequencies. I do not have a frequency graph right offhand for the MKE 600. But again, just on the Ethos side, this is a pretty solid little product. Now, one of the things that I intend to do with these two microphones during this test is that they will be, as best I can possibly do, and I'm looking at it right now in OBS, these are pretty close together as far as incoming gain into OBS. I will do my best to match those inside DaVinci Resolve. And then the other one that I'm going to try and do is apply and disable, so enable and disable noise reduction inside of DaVinci Resolve. Wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of how much can be cleaned, and then also the differences in noise rejections in between having a microphone that is much closer to you as opposed to the MKE 600 that is much further away. Again, I have a ton of sound over to my left, and so having a microphone closer to you allows for a much better rejection profile, whereas the MKE 600 is getting several feet of interfering sounds that are coming in there. Again, it's designed to help form that and be more pointed towards me. But again, you're getting reflections off me, you're getting, again, there's a lot of sound coming over there. So it's never going to stop entirely that sound. Whereas, you know, the Ethos is just a little ways away from my mouth, and that gives less time for the noise to kind of permeate that system. Again, as I look at it here in OBS, the Ethos, when I'm not talking, is at about negative 40 decibels, and the MKE 600 is at about negative 25 decibels. So you have a much higher noise floor there. So anyway, this is kind of my idea of running these together, and then I'll be very interested to hear, you know, kind of what it sounds like, what it's all doing, that type of stuff. So we will let that cook and see where we're at afterwards. All right.